We're going to talk about a common problem in software testing and how TestRigor helps solve that problem. In software development, you typically have software engineers who write great software, and then they hand that software over to test engineers for testing. The test engineers write code to run tests that produce good coverage, verifying the functionality of the software before it ships. Pretty straightforward for the first version of the software. But when you start updating software with new versions, well, things don't always go so smoothly. Let me show you. Version 1.0 has already shipped, and the software engineers start working on version 1.1. They finish and hand it over to the test engineers. The test engineers need to write new code to run tests on the new functionality, but sometimes the new functionality breaks the code they wrote before to test the existing functionality. As they're discovering this, the software engineers have begun work on version 1.2, but the test engineers need to go in and figure out what broke their code, fix it, and write new code for the new functionality. The software engineers finish 1.2, but 1.1 is still in test. The software engineers start working on 1.3, and now we have a bottleneck. Until the test engineers can resolve the issues created by the new version, nothing's getting through that pipeline, and they don't know what other things may break in the next version of the software that has already been written. Let's take a look at how TestRigor addresses the problem. Software engineers work on 1.1. They hand it off to test engineers, but this time the test engineers use TestRigor. TestRigor uses software, we call them robots, to autonomously discover all the app's functionality, create screenshots, and identify changes from the last version. For many apps, this means no more writing test code, so there's no test code to break in the next version. Or in apps that will still require further testing, TestRigor narrows the scope of the test code they'll have to write by identifying what functionality has changed. The software engineers start working on 1.2, and by the time they hand it off to the test engineers, 1.1 has already shipped. They can start working on 1.3 while TestRigor tests for changes and discovers new functionality in 1.2. Bottleneck eliminated.